just popped in right now from entrepreneur and author from Vida, Mr. Ron Lovett. Ron, how are you?
I'm great. Can you hear me okay?
I hear you perfectly. I can hear you perfectly. Hopefully, everyone else can hear you perfectly. Yeah, otherwise, it's just going to be me and you.
Well, this is great. I was just going to answer your question. I'm home. I'm pretending to be at the office, but I think I'm at home. This is good.
Well, okay. It's good. Well, hopefully nobody at the office, your office, is beaming into HR Week because the cat is out of the bag completely.
I hope I'm the only one here from Halifax, Nova Scotia, because I would be busted. It won't be good.
Yeah, busted too, right? Absolutely. Well, listen, we'll keep it a secret, and everybody who's on HR Week today, they'll keep it a secret as well. In the meantime, I'm going to let you get on, and towards the end, again, engagement questions, or if people want to challenge what they've heard as well, they don't necessarily have to agree. That's fine. Pop it in the chat, and towards the end, I'll pop back in, and we can share a short exchange.
Excellent. I'm just, I'm going to present mode here. Your computer. Oh, am I good? Can you see my screen? Can you guys hear me? No. Present. There we go. Can you see now? Am I good? Oh, still nothing. We still don't see it. Preferences. Hold on. We're having a little tech. Uh-oh, this is not good. It doesn't look like it wants me to.
See, we'll keep going. I'm sure we'll get there in the end. We will, I'm sure.
Yeah. Share screen. I'm going to try this one last time. Otherwise, I'm just going to go through my presentation, and I will not have the slides, but I will jump into it.
Okay, let's see if we can get them up. Hopefully they are coming.
And so where are you right now? Where are you located?
We're in Belgrade right now. We're in the center of Belgrade. I didn't ask you, where exactly are you? You're in Halifax, right?
That's right. Halifax, Nova Scotia. Yeah, it is absolutely gorgeous down here today. It's fantastic.
What's the time there now?
It is 9:26 a.m.
Right.
So
you're beginning your day. Yeah. Kicking off your day. We're towards the afternoon now, 2:30. How are we doing? What do you think? Should we carry on without the slides?
I think we're going to have to, it's a system preference. And so I think I'm just going to go with that. Is that okay? I'm going to jump into it.
That's cool. You just carry on. I'll join you a little bit later on.
Yeah. All right. Let's get into this. And look, thanks for having me. Very excited to be back on HR Week. Ron Lovett, Halifax, Nova Scotia. I'm probably the most obsessed person in the world about culture. And I'll challenge anybody on that. I'll get in the ring. I'll duke it out if you think you're more obsessed about culture than me. So let's get into it. I just want to start with a quote. Our jobs are to guide, challenge, and support people to make the best decisions possible, not to make decisions for them. This is the biggest mistake by leaders today, and we wonder why we're all so busy. So I wanted to change my content a little bit. I was on here not too long ago, and I really enjoyed it. But I'm changing things up. I want to go back to basics. And what I mean by that is we are shifting so quickly in the world. We're coming out of the pandemic, let's hope. And I think it's time to go back to basics. And it is time to get back to relationship building. I think it's critical. Relationships are the foundation of everything. If you think about relationships, inclusivity, feeling safe, change management, coaching, none of these things can happen without a strong relationship. So a great mentor of mine, when I was writing my second book, my first book was Outrageous Empowerment. Second book was Scaling Culture. And before the book and the masterclass, Holly Delaney, who used to be the CHRO at Zappos, she said, Ron, I think you have the right buckets, but she pointed out that relationship building was missing as a key component to this, and trust building. And so she was so right. It was an aha moment. So I do want to go back to that, because if you think about relationships, everything we do as leaders today, everything we do brings us closer or separates us, creates a wedge in relationships, from an exclamation point to our tone, etc. So a quick story. I used to be in the private security business before my company Vida today, which I've had for 4 years. So I was in that business for 16 years. Very challenging with security guards. Very challenging business. Anyway, I was building a new office and I had a chief operating officer I had hired. I was probably 28 at the time, 27. He was 60 plus. Very seasoned, came from Coca-Cola or PepsiCo. Sorry, came from PepsiCo. And anyway, as we were building this office, I had solid doors in, the plan was to build solid doors. And he came to me and said, Ron, I think the solid doors send the wrong message. Here's a quote for $360. I would like to build a window in my door so people can see in. And he said, I'd like you to prove it. I said, yeah, great, no problem. I prove it. 60 days later, we're in the office and I used to have a sign in front of my door. The door would be closed. And I had a sign up that said, when this door is closed, please do not disturb it. He comes to see me. He says, look, I'm sorry I'm bothering you with this, but I think that your sign sends the wrong message. Can you please take the sign down? And I just thought, okay, fine. I'll just take the sign down, whatever. I take it down. 60 days later, he comes to see me and he's very upset. He's got steam coming out of his head. And he says, Ron, I don't understand what's going on. I said, what? What's wrong? He said, you have a solid door. I've got a window in my door. Most days my door is open. Your door is closed. You used to have a sign up, but your door is still mostly closed. He said, but when someone has an issue, they come and they talk to you. They don't talk to me. And I said, Dave, this isn't about open door policies. This is about me building relationships. It's not about a window or a door. When someone joins a company, I don't have home court advantage, bring them into my office to build a relationship. I go to a neutral place, somewhere that they're comfortable with. I go to their favorite coffee shop and I have a discussion. And, vulnerability and empathy today equal bravery. And so when I talk to those people, I'll sit down and I'll say, hey, how are you? Welcome to the company. They'll say, oh, great. I'll say, how was your weekend? They'll say, oh, it was great. It's great. How was your weekend? They'll ask. And I'll say, it wasn't great. My daughter, Margot Ireland, was up. So I was up all night and I was stressed. I couldn't sleep. So I was a little anxious the next day and I felt a little uneasy. So I start to talk about my feelings, real feelings, or I was excited about something. That brings this level of authenticity. And then the individual starts to open up. And so it's very important that as leaders, we become vulnerable with those around us, not just empathetic, but vulnerable. And that will pull empathy from people. It'll allow them to open up. But let's just say you can't be vulnerable. Let's just say you're a tough individual. You don't like being vulnerable or open. There is a technique, and I love this technique. It's by Chris Voss, and it's called labeling. And the technique is very interesting. So when you sit down with someone, labeling is a new active listening. So what people you say is, what I heard you say was X. Okay, fine, in a transaction, if you want to be very clear. I'm not suggesting to not use that. But labeling is a little different. Labeling is taking what someone says and packaging up that, whatever their message with feels like or sounds like, and sending it back. So let's play that out. I meet with someone, again, it's a coffee to get to know them. I ask them how their weekend was, and they say, it was good. We had a barbecue and we had some family over that we haven't seen since the pandemic. So it was really nice. And I'll say, wow, sounds like family is very important to you. And I send it back to them and they say, yes, yeah, absolutely. It is. When my parents raised me, they always had family around and it was very important that we spent lots of time with our family. I'll say, wow, feels like your parents taught you really strong values. I just take what someone says, sounds like, feels like, I wrap it up, pass it back to them, and I have incredible conversations. I could have an hour-long conversation with someone without even telling them my name, and they'll say it was the best conversation they've ever had. So let's talk about some other relationship building tips. A lot of times as leaders, we are aggressive, A-type in some cases, ADHD as I am, and so we move fast. So there's times to go first and times to go last. And by the way, I've got a lot of tips, so buckle up, get your pens out. These are very important. All right, back to the content. So let's talk about when you should go first and when you should go last. Leaders should go first, back to what I said before, when you want to be vulnerable. Hey, we have bad news. We lost a major customer. I don't know what's happening with the pandemic. We don't know what's going to happen with our customer base, et cetera. When you want to be vulnerable or when you have important information, you should go first. Important news, good or bad, admitting mistakes. Hey, yesterday I reflected on the meeting, and you know what? I don't think I handled that properly. I should go first in a conversation or group conversation. When should you go last? You should go last, always. Senior leaders should always go last when gathering feedback, ideation sessions, getting opinions, always go last. You are in the back of the class. Okay, it's very important to remember. Let's talk about rebuilding trust, because as leaders, we've broken trust and will continue, and people will break trust around us. And it's interesting because the apology is not the process to rebuild trust, okay? The apology is a starting point. Delivering on a new commitment is how we rebuild trust. So if I was late for a meeting, I would say, look, I'm sorry, I'm committing to be 10 minutes early for our next meeting. That's how I'm going to rebuild the trust. Don't forget, it's important to ask individuals around us what their commitments are when they've broken our trust. It goes both ways. Making a decision. This is something I'm still struggling with. I've caused some confusion. I believe in a lot of autonomy, but there's time and places for how decisions are being made. So for instance, in my past life in the private security space, when the fence at the Rolling Stones concert came down, I didn't stop and say, what should we do here? I would bark out orders, let's move, let's go. Other times I'm collaborating, coming to consensus, looking for majority vote. I'm assigning a decision maker. My point to all of this is, as leaders, the decision-making process changes. Be clear before you start the meeting how the decision is going to be made. Don't make the mistake I've made, which is causing some confusion. So be clear with how the decision will be made when you start the meeting. This is important as far as relationship building, not to rescue people. I do this with my wife all the time. She'll come to me with a problem and I just jump to solutions right away, I've learned over time, when someone comes to me with something, to give them options of where I can deliver value. So for instance, someone will say, Ron, I really need to talk to you. And I'll say, great, before we get started, because I know this is important to you and I want to deliver as much value as possible, I have a few questions. Would you like me to just listen to what you have to say? Would you like me to share a similar experience that I had and how I got around that? Do you want me to give you my objective perspective on what you're saying? Or do you want me to coach you through it? You tell me, and I'll make sure I deliver value. So stop the conversation and make sure you're delivering value in the best way possible for that individual. In most cases, like my wife, just want me to listen. So that is the inbound. Let's talk about outbound, because that's more common. As leaders, we have outbound feedback. We've noticed something. And I'll tell you, this is just the simplest tool. If you want to deliver feedback in a way that's going to land properly, you're just going to do two things. When you go to someone to deliver feedback, you need to state that, hey, I have some feedback that I'm very confident will be beneficial to you. Would you mind if I shared it? So I'm doing two things. I'm saying I have something that's going to help lift you up, and I'm asking permission to give it to you. I have something that's some feedback that's going to be helpful towards your trajectory, your career, whatever it is. It's going to help you, and I'm asking for feedback. That's very different than, hey, we need to talk about what happened yesterday. That's very different. This process will help build the relationship. Preparing for a tough conversation. This is critical. It took me so long to learn this. And I'll tell you, in leaders today, the most challenging thing and gap in leadership is that part, is having the tough conversation. So there's three critical steps. Oh, actually, let me start back. There's an opening step, which I've also learned over time before I get into this 1, 2, 3 step process. So before having a tough conversation, I check the temperature. I make sure that I'm in a good headspace, and they are as well. I want to make sure that I've had a good sleep. I feel good. I've got nothing really bottling up or stressing me, as well as them. So I check in advance before I start a very difficult conversation, because I've certainly made the mistake of getting into a tough conversation with someone who's just not there. They've had 3 children crying and screaming and sick at home. And so no matter what we discuss, they're in an emotional state. So let's proceed. Let's pretend everyone's in a good state. I prepare with these 3 things. What is my intention? And the intention has to be able to lift them up. What are the desired outcomes of the conversation? And most importantly, how do I want this person to experience me? That one's critical, because I can be a fast talking, pound the table, passionate entrepreneur, but that's not how I want someone to experience the interaction with me. I want them to say, Ron was very caring, compassionate. He was a great listener. I know he really cares for my well-being. That's critical. So let's walk through this. You have a salesperson that's struggling and you want to talk to them. So most conversations say, hey, we need to talk about your productivity at work. Divisive. How you go into this is, look, I have some feedback, kind of what I talked about before, that I believe will be absolutely critical to your success. And my intention of this conversation is to make you the best salesperson possible, better than I ever was. That gives me the green light to start discussing my outcomes. You have to follow up with the customers, and I'm now into my coaching. You have to, let's talk about, filling out your CRM and your accountability and what you're committing to rebuild trust. And then I always ensure that I stay on point and prepare with how I want them to experience me. And I write down loving, caring, listening. That's critical. It is critical to my leadership, and it's been a game changer. Being a sponge versus springboard. And this is a small tweak in leadership. We were always told, be a sponge, be a sponge. Now, I run a podcast called Scaling Culture podcast. And I've learned through that podcast that being a sponge is okay, but being a springboard is better. And it builds relationships. And what that means is a sponge just sits there and just listens. A springboard is a off-take to a deeper conversation. Someone might tell me something, and I'll say, whoa, can you tell me more? How did you feel when that happened? Or can you explain a little more? That's intriguing. Tell me more about that. Or what did you learn when that happened? So I'm interrupting and springboarding to questions that dive deeper into the topic, not just being a sponge. That's the next level of conversation. I think this is also common. It took me a long time to get through this and over this. When I was young, I used to try to be interesting. Now I am 100% committed to being interested. Okay. And I know for a fact that people that talk too much are really just insecure. Okay. It is a sign of insecurity. Those who ask great questions are smart people. Those who ask the best questions are the smartest people. So let's all try to be interested versus interesting. Transferring a relationship, just very important, because it's not just building, it's transferring once we've built. And the key thing is lifting the other person up. Hey, I'd like to introduce you to Sarah, even if this is a coworker in another region. Sarah is an incredible expert who has 10 years of experience and is better at dealing with your new needs, whether it's customer or internal customer, being a coworker. Sarah's better at dealing with these types of things than me. You're in great hands. So make sure we are transferring and lifting up the person we transfer to in the relationship. It's too bad you can't see my screen, but there was a picture at my daughter's school. It said, spoken words can't be erased. Don't blurt what might hurt. So it brings me to some language things that I want to talk about. And I learned this at therapy in my own relationship with my wife, and really brought into work. But language like always, never, you always, you never, that needs to stop. It's just not accurate. It really is divisive using language like that. Okay. Instead, and the other day you did this to me. The other day you made me. That language all needs to go. We really need to start talking about things a little differently. So if someone was to upset you, you'd say, look, yesterday, Tom, when you mentioned X, it made me feel insecure. It made me feel upset. So that would draw empathy from the other people. I'm not saying you upset me yesterday. That's not what happened. Comments made me feel upset. And so be very cautious of your language. The other thing that I love when you think of delegation, can you help me with this? Or sorry, in delegation today, we're saying, can you do? I think we need to the kinder ways, would you mind? But it's really, as a leader, you should be asking for help. As humans, we love to help other humans. So the language should be, hey, I could really use your help with this, versus, can you take care of this? Do you mind doing this? Start asking for help. Use vulnerability to bring people closer and give them energy to help you out. This is critical too, as far as blurting things out. I learned this a long time ago and I still use this process. So before I say something, and this could be in a personal relationship or with a coworker, I'll ask myself 3 questions. And this is in a private or public conversation. Before I blurt something out, I'll say, does this need to be said by me? Does this need to be said right now? And does it really need to be said at all? If it's not yes, 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 I'm quiet. Sometimes it may need to be said by me, but not right now. Just not now, but it needs to be said, but not right now. So ask yourself those 3 questions. This is something I'm talking about with my team. We've scaled from 6 people. We were a $3 million company in my real estate business to, we've got 350 million now under ownership. We're about 26 million in revenue. And so we scaled our team from probably 18 months ago or 5 to I think we're just north of 30 now. So I have everyone, there's two components here. I have everyone, all of our leaders need to be spending 10% of their time recruiting. We don't use an outside recruiter. If you want to see some creative ads, check us out on LinkedIn for Vida. We do some very creative stuff and how we position our ads. But that aside, 2 things. We have everyone spending time building relationships in the business, which we'll talk about a little later. And we have everyone spending time recruiting outside of the business, having coffees, having discussions with people about joining our company. It's critical in this environment. Power of internal peer groups. Every same level environment in my organization, we have peer-to-peer groups. We really strengthen relationships from same level leaders so they get together once a month, talk about their bigger challenges so they can help each other out. It relieves pressure from the managers that support them or that they report to. Have that group build their own community and share critical information. Connecting to mentorship. This is something I am so committed to doing. Every individual in my company, I'm not there yet. I'm about 40% of the way. Started with my leadership team and started to move down. Getting mentorship, I take for granted sometimes that when I have a question, I call 1,000 people. I really do. It's a huge competitive advantage as an entrepreneur. Most people are their pride gets in their way. I have none of those problems, and I'm very fortunate for that. So I go out of my way to connect individuals with external, not internal, external mentorship. I would think about that. It's added such value to those working for me, not just to my leadership, but the stickiness to our environment. I want to talk about this platinum triangle very quickly. This is key for success. And if you want to systemize your business, anytime somebody makes a mistake in a regular occurring function, there's 3 questions to ask. Do we have a simple, very simple system or process for this? Did we, as a company, do we have a simple system or process? Did we provide that individual the tools, and did we train them with the system and the tools? If it's not yes, 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 it's your problem as a leader and your problem as a company. And you need to look in the mirror and fix that. So did you provide the tools, the simple system or process, could be a checklist, and were they trained? Think about that. A couple other things as we get to the end here. We're going to be in a hybrid environment. Don't forget to lean in, share things. This is my whiteboard. You can barely see. I've got pictures of my kids up here. I couldn't get the virtual background to work. This is a tech, my tech, I had a tech meltdown, okay? So I've got whiteboard space in my family office. Share your space. Introduce your family. Introduce things that are special to you. Use it as a relationship building environment. For us on a Friday huddle, it's great. I don't know if you guys have quick team meetings or huddles. On Friday, what we do is we have people talk about their highs for the week and who they are grateful for. It's a value shout out. They give gratitude to other members of the team. So they're grateful for so-and-so who helped them out. It energizes everybody going into the weekend. Return to work very quickly. Big discussion. We don't know where we're landing. Everyone's going to be different on this topic, but I'll tell you, my position has been this. I have noticed that younger people are suffering more burnout because of their lacking human connectivity. And they're lacking the opportunity to build their EQ, their leadership, their skill building on reading energy. And so my point is, I've heard a lot of people say, oh, 3 days a week and 2 days a week. Look, I don't disagree with that, but I think it's time to have one-on-one conversation on what's in it for the individual. What is in it for me? Because companies are saying, well, collaboration is better. I don't disagree, but what's in it for me? That's in it for you and your company. What's in it for me as the individual? We have to take our time for you're talking about change management, changing my behavior. And so there needs to be, what is in it for me? Change management. If you're going to change something at the company, you need to explain what's in it for me. So the other thing we've done is double down on relationship building. Every quarter, everyone makes new commitments to people they don't have relationships with, to go for coffees, go for walks. And it's absolutely helped our business. Quick additional tips. Start thinking about things as a success path versus career path. Success is, what is successful to you at this company? Is it getting involved with our nonprofit? Is it moving to a different place because you have family there? Is it getting involved in our social media side, even though you're an accountant? Start thinking of things as success versus career, okay? Last quote, and I love this. None of us are going to build great companies. We are going to lead incredible people who build great companies. So I'm Ron Lovett, author of Outrageous Empowerment and Scaling Culture. And check out our podcast, the Scaling Culture podcast. Thanks so much for having me.
Fantastic. Listen, great. You did it without a presentation. Didn't need it in the end at all. Well, I mean, okay, visually, maybe probably would have enhanced it.